Good evening, everyone. And it's Friday night, it's middle of December, and it's the Monte Zone with me, Monty Ban, and my co-host, G-Star. Good evening, G. How are you doing? I've unmuted you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yes.
I can be heard.
You can be heard, yes. Why is that not quite in the right place? Move over. Right, okay. Yes. We are here. It's Friday. It's a bit earlier than we'd originally planned because we wanted to keep out of the way of Christmas and all the festivities and things. So we thought we'll go a little bit early in the month. So this might be to ourselves, but people will hopefully join us throughout the evening, and if not, they can catch the replay later in the month. But we're here, and we're going to be talking to you about the pyramids of Giza again, or the Giza Plateau and Egyptology, and the same sort of topics. Part 2 of the topics we were talking about last time, G.
Yeah, we're going to be talking all Giza.
Because we're a couple of geezers.
Yeah. You just said Giza so many times. I was like, we're geezers.
Yeah, we're geezers. Yeah. We're going to start off with a couple of interesting news articles that I found since that have cropped up since we were last on air. So we'll cover that first. But yeah, so in chat at the moment, we've got my wrench smiler, evening smiler. Yeah, no, the joke's not getting old. I like my wrench. And I've got Crazy Cracky. Good evening, Crazy. Crazy got me a couple of victory royales in Fortnite last night, so I was pretty happy about that. So thanks for that, Crazy. Yes. So, should we start off with story number 1, G?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So this is about since we were last on air, there was a weird story that came up and hit headlines all over the world, and everybody's heard of it apart from G, apparently, who this was news to him this evening. Is the monoliths, or the monolith that appeared in the Utah desert. Here's the story from BBC News. So this is a somewhat credible news source. What basically happened was these park rangers were flying over the Utah desert in a helicopter counting sheep. They were conducting a survey to see how many sheep were living in the area, and they do this via helicopters because you got to imagine they're covering an area that's like the size of England, and
isn't that really dangerous though, counting sheep when you're flying a helicopter?
Why? Because it'll put them to sleep. So you're like 1, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do they know they haven't counted like sheep twice? Like after they've been going for half an hour, and they see a flock. Yeah, it's a flock of sheep. That's right. Is that right? It's a flock. A flock of sheep. How do they know it's not the same ones they just counted half an hour ago? Or they go.
Maybe they've got some sort of special laser machine.
I don't know. Anyway, they were going over this area, and they found in this canyon that they saw something glisten off the in the sunlight. Come back, and they thought they'd go in and have a closer look to see what it is, because they're like hundreds of miles away from anywhere, and they come across this this metal monolith that was just sticking out of the ground, and they thought that was strange. I don't know if they were,
as you would. Yeah,
it's 3.6 meters tall. There they are, going up and inspecting it, and it just seemed like it's thought to be an installation by an artist, but it's kind of a strange thing to do in the middle of the desert, miles away from anywhere. For what purpose? Nobody's come forward and claimed it was them, as far as I believe, but it has since disappeared. Someone's come along and had away with it. Since the news item came up, people went on Google Earth and had a look at and tried to find where it was. And the first person to reach the location did so within 24 hours of the news in the headlines. And people started going back through Google Earth photos, because if you go to Google Earth, you can cycle through years of satellite imagery, and they found that it actually appeared at that spot in 2016. So it's been there for 4 years. Nobody's noticed. But the other weird thing is that since this thing appeared, like 100 or so have appeared all over the world. And you can search it up on Wikipedia. So there's a picture of the original one in Utah. And here's a list of all of those monoliths that have appeared since this one's been found last month. And there's a lot of them. And curiously, for those, carry on.
So how are they all of a sudden finding them?
Yeah, they're just appearing.
Like, oh, right.
There's one on Dartmoor that appeared 2 days ago.
Okay, I'm going.
But if you look down the United Kingdom, is on a hill, Dartmoor, near the village of Throwley. So I did a quick search for
It says road trip.
Dartmoor monolith, and
Start the engine now.
again on BBC News, there's one that's appeared on Dartmoor, just up the road from us.
Nice. Is that one still there? Or is it?
I believe that one's still there. Yeah.
So what are we doing, Si? Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do an outside broadcast.
Yeah.
From on site.
Yeah. So yeah, here's one.
So my next question
Here's
is,
one. Here's another one that appeared in California. Anyway, yeah.
So my next question would be, have they mentioned what they're made of?
Yeah, I mean that's why they think that they're by an artist or artistes, because I think they're just like stainless steel, and down one side you can even see rivets of how it's put together. I don't think it's of alien origin or anything like that, but it's certainly an interesting thing, for it to have appeared. Yes. Yeah, Crazy Cracky hadn't heard of it either. He thinks he's been living under a rock. He's had no idea about this thing. It was in the news. Yes, so that was the first thing, and another little story that I found since we were last on air, and again this was from 2 days ago, on the 8th of December. There's a leaked government photo that shows a motionless cube-shaped UFO taken by an F-18 fighter pilot. So this fighter pilot was on routine maneuvers when he flew right past this thing and quickly got his mobile phone out and took a snap of it over his shoulder. And yeah, so it was filed and then leaked, and it's not been denied. They've just said what it is. They don't know what it is. It was taken by one of their F-18 pilots, and they called it a cube-shaped object. He says it was completely stationary, and some people have suggested that it was it's possibly a scientific research balloon, something like that. I don't know if there's not a better shot of it. No.
It's
But
weird because it doesn't look like a cube.
no, it doesn't. No.
Do you know what I mean? It looks more like like sort of a shape of an animal's head.
I'll tell you what it looks like to me. If you imagine we're looking across the face of it, it looks like the Batman symbol from the sort of more recent Batman films, like almost side on. If you imagine it rotates around. Do you see what I mean?
It's kind of weird that. Yeah, it's kind of weird though that to the right there's an advert for a Forever Spin, which looks very similar.
Yeah. I went to look at it then, and it disappeared. I was like, "What?"
If that's an accident or intentional marketing.
The problem with the
it's really,
the high altitude research balloon is if you ever see a high altitude research balloon, they look very long. And they're quite bulbous on top because as they go up high in the atmosphere, they expand. So they're basically these long thin things with a big ball on top. It looks nothing like that, and it's way too high to be an actual balloon, unless Richard Branson's going for some weird billionaire ballooning around the world type thing again. Or maybe it's Elon Musk's some sort of weird balloon. I don't know. But I mean, they're like up on the top of the atmosphere there at like 32,000 feet or whatever. And that's... Anyway, it's another strange thing.
Very strange.
Very
it's a
strange.
Good picture though, because it's what's really good about it is it's taken by what type of craft did you say the pilot was flying?
An F-18.
An F-18.
Yeah, it was actually taken in 2018, 2 years ago, over the Atlantic.
Military pilot. So that's sort of quite credible in itself. But the thing that we were talking about, the whole motion factor before we were broadcasting, and the interesting thing is from the article, you can't, because there's no video, you can't get the vision. Or what I mean is you can't prove that it was motionless. They're just saying that it's motionless, but would have been nice to have seen a video or something that was motionless. Or else it could just be a bit of debris dropping out of space.
Well, yeah. Anyway, there you go. There looks to be sort of like you can see the sun glinting off the side of it there, but there does seem to be some sort of like structure or something going on the side of it there. It doesn't.
You can almost see rivets as well, like sort of
rivets
just on that side, but you can almost see just like little bits that stick out. But going back to the show that we did a few weeks back, where we were talking about Trent photos. I mean, the whole light and being able to prove that the sunlight is in the right place and stuff. That's all the kind of things that they do when they analyze these, and it's good that you can sort of see that as well. You can definitely see the sun shining and it matches with where the sun looks like it's in the position of when you look at the pilot. The sun is off to his left, so it would be again matching.
Yeah. Smiler wants to go on a road trip.
Yeah, that was about half an hour ago.
Yeah.
We want to go on a road trip, Evan Monolith, and we want to do an outside broadcast, touching it, and talking about how it's making us feel.
Do you know you're in your house this week, this month, G? You're in your house rather than down in your log cabin, but it's not really improved the reception. You're still dropping in and out to me. I don't know why that is. But anyway, we will continue. So that's the news, such as it is. Now we're going to get on to the main event. So obviously, the last Monte Zone, we talked about um, the pyramids of Egypt. We talked about the Giza Plateau. We talked about some of the alternative theories of what the Great Pyramid was all about, and we also talked about the fact that there's controversy over whether Khufu built it, whether it was earlier than that, and and the sort of the times of when these things were built and who by whom. Was there anything else you wanted to say on those theories that we talked about last time, G, that we didn't, or should we just continue?
Yeah, I think if we just continue, and then I'm pretty sure there'll be moments where I touch on it anyway and talk about it again.
Okay, so one thing I was going
to... one of the things that we obviously said that we were going to do is after the show, in the description, we'll drop a link to a couple of videos that would basically covered what I was talking about in the last episode about the Tesla electricity. So we'll drop that in the description, so you got a link. One of the videos is definitely, it's a good watch. It's about 15 or 20 minutes altogether, but yeah, we'll drop them in the description.
Yeah, I'll add those links after the stream. Smiler says that Dee and Mazza have tuned in via their TV, so they're not in chat, but they're watching. So good evening, Dee, and good evening, Mazza. Thank you for coming along and listening to our ramblings. It's good to have you on board. So the next thing I was going to talk about as far as the Great Pyramid goes, and this is something we didn't cover last week, but it's the theory that the Great Pyramid and pyramids in general on the Giza Plateau were actually built to be giant hydraulic water pumps. Have you heard that one?
Yep, I was watching a video about that earlier today.
I can't pretend to understand the whys and whatfalls about it. There's some interesting papers and articles about it. Oh, and Luda. And Luda's here. Sorry, Maz. Luda's watching as well. She is in chat there. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know if you know of any of the specifics about how that supposedly worked, but essentially, like this paper here from this website, the Sentinel Kernels, they go into a lot of detail about how the Nile River came up to the banks that we, at the edge of the plateau that we see today. And when they started receding, they built a wall of retaining walls around these pyramids. And this is like a schematic of a standard hydraulic ram pump that they use in things like dams to redistribute water. And the corridors and the layout of the pyramid, along with an outside retaining wall that we know all the pyramids had, but most of it's gone now, could possibly work in the same sort of way as a standard hydraulic pump. And the point of this is to take water from the Nile via the when the inundation comes and the water's high, collect that water, and then when the inundation disappears and they go through periods of drought, to use that retained water to redistribute it to beyond the pyramids, because they realized that desertification was coming, and this was their response to the surrounding area turning to desert. So that's it in a nutshell.
Oh. Well, that's slightly different than the one that I heard.
Oh, you've got another one?
It's another water theory. I was watching a video about it today, and the subterranean uh, tunnels that are in the pyramids that go down at an angle. Um, it's said that there's a theory that running water through there's a bottom chamber, and that chamber would have had a valve in it that made the water make some sort of movement as it's going down and it's rushing, because it would pick up speed. And the reason, part of this theory anyway, is the reason why there's quite a lot of granite in the pyramid, and the pyramid is the structure that it is because that water would create the noise of it, would create sonar energy, which then is picked up by the granite and turned into electromagnetic energy. So
Oh
it's
right, oh
again
right, no, right.
one of leaning towards this theory that they're built for trying to use some kind of power or electricity that doesn't come from what we would typically know as known source. But yeah, and it's kind of, this theory sort of goes quite deeply into why granite is used and how it conducts that kind of sonar energy that would have been made by the water. So yeah, it was a new one on me. I'd never seen that one. I was watching that just a few hours ago, actually.
Yeah, me being a complete spoon, here I am talking about it and going through the diagrams, and of course I didn't actually have it shared. So this was the Sentinel article I was talking about. This is when I said, like, the Nile going up to the edge of the Giza plateau. And this is the diagram of a standard hydraulic ram pump, the sort of schematic of it. And this is how they think it worked in practice with the Great Pyramid, with the external returning wall. So, yeah. Anyway, that was me talking about the diagrams that you couldn't see at the time. But yeah, so that's another theory. I don't necessarily, I'm not particularly keen on that theory, or the theory of it being used to generate power through water. I don't think a lot of them hold up weight, because there's nothing in the pyramid that's like hermetically sealed. None of it's watertight. It wouldn't hold water. Water would just seep through. I mean, even as good as masonry as they had, with the joins and stuff being, less than a paper thick, water would still just go through the whole thing. So none of it seems to really hold up too much weight in my book.
Yeah, I mean, just in reflection at this point, and I think we were touching a little bit about this in the last show, is that there's so many different theories, and there's just so many different kind of, even within those theories, little sub theories and other research that goes on. And it's really, really interesting that there are so many varied different theories. And when you take a step back and you think, why is that? And I just think that if we were to rewind back to where we started first talking about this in the last show, it's like, because the current explanation that's been the known explanation for however many centuries, it just doesn't hold up. Like that it was just used for burial or monumental reasons for a individual, because logic doesn't really hold up around that. And just to lean towards that, it's just, for me, it's some of the mathematics that has gone into the pyramid. A lot of people, when they look at the pyramids, they just, some people who are not very well knowledgeable about the pyramids or the history, they just see them as very clever, fancy piles of rocks and, that sort of thing. But the fact is, there's back then, the Egyptians could have decided to take this massive undertaking to build this structure in monument to a pharaoh or an individual, but okay, that in itself is a huge undertaking to do that. But then, along with that, why put so many mathematics and science into the construction and the building of the pyramids that if it was just used for a burial purpose? So I think that's why there's so many theories, because people are still trying to find out, what was the real meaning of these, what was their purpose, because what we know as general education doesn't I don't think it holds weight.
I do quite like Matt from Ancient Architects has written a paper and produced a new long video explaining his theory of the Great Pyramid, and that is that Khufu did build it as a tomb, exactly as Egyptologists think it was, but he, back then lives weren't typically not always very long. There was wars or famines, or people died quite easily through some plague or another. So he started off with building a mastaba and the standard shaft down to a burial chamber underneath, so that he was the most important pharaoh to have lived up to that time. The most powerful pharaoh, the most important human to have ever existed, pretty much. And he wanted to make sure that when he died, no matter, bearing in mind that he was planning on building the greatest achievement that mankind's ever built, he wasn't entirely convinced he was going to live long enough to see its completion. So to safeguard against that, when they started, the first thing that they did was they dug the underneath subterranean chamber, which took place whilst they were building the original pyramid. But by the time they finished the pyramid up to such a stage that they could build in the Queen's chamber, this was no longer needed. So they left it unfinished. They only got halfway through digging it out and then gave up on that in favour of then building the Queen's chamber. So that was going to be the original tomb with the original shafts that go out about 2/3 of the way out, and the pyramid was going to originally be about 2/3 of the size of the pyramid is now. And that was finished, and the shafts were finished, and the recent Jedi robot has gone out to the ends of these shafts and found capping stones on the end, and all the stones at the end of this shaft are all finished in Chura white finished limestone, which is the same sort of limestone they found on the outside casing stones. So in the middle of this pyramid, at the end of these shafts, are external casing stones, finished to perfection. So I think that was the original intention. But he got to finishing his pyramid, or looking like he was going to finish his pyramid, with this being the original burial tomb. But he was still alive. He was still living. So he thought, well, I'm going to push the boat out even further and build the pyramid even bigger and have an even grander chamber for myself, which is when this was the final end of the construction. And then all this lot was kind of forgotten in favour of the end product. So that was his theory, which is, another possible theory. I mean, it's all these things are just interpretations of what we see, isn't it? But I quite like it. I quite like his theory. And he's got a theory of what the air shafts are, what these are, and that is an interesting theory as well, which I'm not going to go into now. We can make that a subject of another time, the air shafts. You could spend an hour or two just talking about the air shafts by themselves. But tonight we're mainly going to talk about the Sphinx. And
Are we?
Are we? We are, aren't we?
Are we? That's news to me. Newsflash.
I think so. Sphinx. See what I did there. Not nobody laugh and chat. No, okay. It's just me then. Just me. So
it
here
might be. It'll just take a couple of minutes to come up.
I've got Maz. Look, here's Maz and the Sphinx.
I Sphinx. It's Maz.
I Sphinx. It's Maz. Yeah, that one. So there we have the Sphinx in front of the Khafre pyramid. Oh, thanks, Crazy. He at least tried with a fake laugh. Thanks. I appreciate that. He's got my back, you see. So here's the Sphinx. Like that's better. Yeah. So as we know, Egyptologists believe that the Sphinx was built by the same person that built the pyramid behind it there, Khafre. The grandson of Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. And there's a number of reasons. There's a number of very good reasons why we don't think that's the case. Do you want to let us know one reason, G, why we think it may be older?
Because the base of it is they've carbon dated it or whatever, and it's older than.
You can't carbon date stone.
Well, do you know what I mean? They tested the age.
No, there's no way of knowing in testing. There's no way of knowing how old. There's nothing there. They've done it with the Great Pyramid. They found organic matter between the stones inside the pyramid, and they've carbon dated that organic matter, and it's come out to between 2,500 to 3,500 years BC, which is roughly when they think Khufu built it. So that all panned out. There's been no organic matter around here that they can test, and it's just rock. But it's circumstantial. The reason they think it was built by Khafre is circumstantial, mainly because of where it's situated. Because this is what they call Khafre's. What do they call those? The big long paths at the end of. Causeway. This is Khafre's causeway. Now, if I just bring up one of the plans I've got of Giza, there we go. If you can see that. So there's Khafre's causeway. There's Khafre's pyramid. There's Khafre's funerary temple and Khafre's valley temple. And the Sphinx is a part of this whole complex. So the natural assumption is that the Sphinx was built by Khafre as a part of his whole temple complex. But the association with Khafre and these temples are fairly circumstantial in that, they were certainly used as a part of his pyramid, and some statues were found inside. There's one statue actually found inside the Valley Temple of Khafre, which is what started them off on the whole this is Khafre's in the first place. But that's about it, really. That's the thing that they've dated it against. But there's quite a lot of evidence to say that it's older than that. And this temple, the causeway, the funerary temple, and the Sphinx temple were all there before any of the pyramids had appeared. That these are the original sort of religious construction on the Giza Plateau. This was the Giza Plateau, and the Giza Plateau in itself was used to build the pyramids on, mainly because of this construction here and the Great Sphinx.
Interesting.
So one of the reasons they think that is the walls around the Great Sphinx enclosure. So just looking at Maria's picture here, this is the Great Sphinx in its enclosure, and we can see behind the Sphinx here, that's the west wall of the enclosure, and to the left here we can see the south wall of the enclosure. And if we zoom in on that area, you can see how it's got these vertical lines in the limestone, and they reckon that all these lines that we're seeing in the limestone here is hundreds, if not thousands, of years of water erosion when the Giza Plateau had a lot more water, a lot more rainfall, a lot more water in general than what it has now. And that in itself is one of the main things. They've had a plethora of geologists and experts in this field, doctors from Harvard and all sorts of people analysing the rocks and studying this, and they think it dates this enclosure and the Sphinx to at least around 10 or 12,000 years BC rather than to 2,400 BC. So it's about 10,000 years older than what general Egyptologists say it is. And they think that was here before everything else. So the enclosure itself is a quarry. So this square area was a quarry. The lion-shaped body was quarried out of the rock face, and the rock that was quarried out of here was used to make the Valley Temple and Sphinx Temple that are in front of it. They've analysed the rocks, and they can tell where these rocks come from in accordance with this quarry. So the Valley Temple and Sphinx Temple, as we were looking at it a minute ago, these two temples here were quarried out of the Sphinx enclosure. So if the Sphinx was quarried out around 10,000 years ago, then these temples were built around 10,000 years ago. The Valley Temple, the Temple of Khafre, was built first, because the Sphinx Temple, even though in this map here it looks like there's a gap between them, actually the Sphinx Temple, this south wall here, is actually built into this temple. So we think this temple came first, the Sphinx Temple came second, and then the causeway up to the Funerary Temple came next. And this would have all been done around the same sort of time. But, again, these are all just what certain experts have taken from what evidence we've got. And then possibly then at a later point, Khafre then turned this into his complex. We can see the causeway, if we look at I don't know if it's shown on Maria's photo here, but I think it is. You can see the causeway here is built on top of the worn away rock and looks newer. So it looks like there was an original causeway, and then there was an additional causeway built on top of the original causeway. So they think this causeway was used also to build the Great Pyramid. So possibly it was used for that purpose as well. And then when they built Khafre's pyramid, they bolstered up the causeway and remodeled it. But that's one reason.
Yeah, I mean, it might have seemed that I just had my face into something then, but it was because I was going back and trying to look at my photos of when I was there, because the angle which this photograph is taken from, I was thinking to myself, I'm sure when I was there, the bit that you walked around it was closer, but I've just gone and back through my photos and it's not. It was the same. But that what you're talking about there, the bit that you walk on when you're sort of when you're doing the viewing
from like over here,
it's a different level from where if the other people who are walking up the main causeway.
Yeah.
You are like separated. So yeah, I was just going back and looking at that, because the one thing that I would that's pretty layman is that when I was there, I thought it was much smaller than what I imagined it was. In certain films and certain things, they make it look so big,
Hmm.
but in terms of height, but it wasn't actually. It didn't feel like that big. It sort of felt
I
like
think it is for
the
a
height.
statue. It's pretty big for a statue, but I think it's dwarfed in front of the pyramids. It makes it the pyramids make it feel small.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely long as well.
Mm.
But yeah.
Um, another problem with if anybody's got any questions, by the way, in chat, if anybody's still out there, and I haven't actually put everybody to sleep, or if anybody's got any questions, please let us know, and we'll try our best. Another reason why they think it's older.
You had a lot of fake laughs earlier on.
I did, yeah. I think
Yeah.
that might have
Crazy
warm out.
fake laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see the brickwork on the side of the Sphinx. So originally, obviously, it didn't have all these striations in it. It would have been a beautifully carved statue, which would have looked, you'd seen the muscle tone in the lion and that sort of thing. But all this what we see here, a lot of it's been restored. Actually, it didn't look anything like this. Sort of 100 years ago, it's all been filled in with concrete and that. And I'll bring up some old photos of it in a bit so you can see the difference between what it looks now and what it looked, say, 80 years ago. But these horizontal lines were mainly worn through sand erosion, wind erosion, that sort of thing, weather erosion, not the sort of vertical water erosion lines that we see around the edge of the enclosure. Because it's been slightly protected. But obviously, as it was getting worn away, Egyptians started trying to build the body up to make sure it still maintained some of its features. And there are maps of all this brickwork and what's modern, what was done in the last couple of 100 years, what was done by Ramesses II, because he was one of the last pharaohs to really do a major DIY job on the Sphinx. Tutmosis IV also did a lot of renovations on the Sphinx, and some of these bricks are from his period. And some of the earliest bricks they found renovating the Sphinx comes from the 4th dynasty in the Old Kingdom, which is from the time of Khafre, when the Sphinx was supposed to be built. So, experts ask, why do you think Khafre built this and it was brand new if we can date some of the brick renovations to the time of Khafre? It seems that it was maybe around a lot longer than that. So that leads us on to, was it always a Sphinx? So
Yeah.
there's...
I was hoping that you weren't going to brush past that.
No. So there's several schools of thought on, okay, so if the Sphinx was a lot older, and if Khufu or Khafre repurposed an already old monument, did they repurpose it further and remodel the head after themselves? So is it Khafre or Khufu we're looking at here, as in the face, or some other Egyptian pharaoh god? And was it originally something else? And the things that they think it was either this was a lion, and there was, before the reign of pharaohs, before the Old Kingdom, there was a big lion god, a lion deity that they worshipped around the inundation. I've forgotten what that god was called. It will come to me.
Are you talking about Osiris?
Yeah, I think it was originally the original form of Osiris. Yeah, so that
there's a
one
school
thing.
of thought around Osiris. I'll explain that a little bit.
Or was it a jackal? Is this what we're actually looking at? A dog? with a long pointy nose, the Egyptian jackals, and Anubis. So that's the two schools of thought. I think personally it was a lion, because of the size of the rock and the type of limestone that it is. A big long-nosed dog, I think that would have snapped off a long time ago. I don't think that would have structurally at this size been a sound design. But yeah, what's your thing on Osiris then, G?
Well, I just I thought that there was some sort of hieroglyphs. I can't remember if it's Osiris or Anubis, but there was in some hieroglyphs. There's explanation that on the Giza plateau somewhere it talks about the tomb or the temple of Osiris, and that in the hieroglyphs it's sort of explained that it's somewhere around that area. But because nobody's found it, there's a school of thought or a group of theorists that reckon that it's underneath the Sphinx, and that's something that they still are not allowed to explore and get further under. And there's people that think that there's chambers underneath there, and I think the general school of thought, again, I could be wrong, is that those temples or those chambers are something to do with either Osiris or Anubis or something.
Maybe. I haven't got any, can't find any evidence of that. Just having a quick search. No, but here is an example of, just bringing this up. So that's like an example of a jackal, like an Egyptian jackal. Stupid Bing. I don't know why I'm using Bing. But you can see the general layout with the paws outstretched, the haunches. You can't quite make it out, but there's a tail. And if you imagine if this head was chopped off and all you had was this neck to play with and you recarved it into a face, how that would end up looking like the Great Sphinx. So that's the sort of thing they might have thought it might have been if it was a jackal. But yeah. There's also evidence. So around the world, there's in museums, there's lots of each museum has its own Egypt collection, and in those Egypt collections, you'll quite often see some sphinxes, whether it be from the Old Kingdom or from a later kingdom. But almost always, those sphinxes were originally lions, and the faces were recarved into pharaohs, and that's proven. That's scientifically proven. They went on a campaign of doing that through the Middle Kingdom, from the First Kingdom through Middle Kingdom. That's what they did. They repurposed lions.
I've just looked it up, and the theory that I was talking about wasn't about it being connected to Osiris or Anubis. It's meant to be the ancient library. There's a lot of
the
people that have
library.
the theory that
Yeah.
the ancient library underneath there, and but there is, just to point out, there is no evidence that it's just one guy who was an early Egyptologist. It was his theory, but there isn't anything to substantiate or back it up. But there is obviously skepticism because it's something that the current authorities that control the Giza plateau, it's like they are stopping any excavation further under the Sphinx, and so that's what I think also sparks off a lot of why? Mysterious. Why are you so protective over? Because it's felt that if there was this sort of library that is mentioned in hieroglyphs or something, that it would explain a lot and answer a lot of the questions that we still scratch our head about, the missing holes and this and that.
Well, there's definitely been proven that there's some strange things about the Sphinx. We can go into some of the secret entrances in a minute. I've just found a slightly better picture that's demonstrating what I was talking about. You can see it here. So here's a profile of the Sphinx, and this is the profile that they think it had if it was a jackal. So you can see how the Sphinx would have been carved out of the jackal. I thought that was quite an interesting one.
Yeah, because there's all, again, I might be moving too far ahead, but the theory of the second Sphinx, and usually within most of the depictions or statues or temples or monuments that you see, there's usually two jackals. In most, they're side by side, almost like a gateway, or at the end of either stairway or as you say, like causeway or something. So you'd expect that if there was going to be a second one, it would be on the other side of there, and it would be like two guarding dogs. The same thing as we see on end of driveways. Some people have it like two lines on their driveway, either side of their driveway, that sort of thing. But it's actually meant to be over the other side, so there's some sort of connection with north and south or east and west. But anyway, it's really funny that you showed that picture earlier on, the first one that you showed of the jackal, and it was sitting on top of that kind of box thing. And you've got to wonder to yourself, where did that imagery come from? Because if that was, maybe that Sphinx is sitting on something, like if you were to blow it up to actual size, maybe it is sitting on top of a stone room, similar to what that one looks like. Do you know what I mean?
Ground penetrating radar seems to think that there is something below it. There is a void. There are definitely voids inside it, and there are some entrances. Here's some photos of what it looked like. So the head, a lot of it has been rebuilt. It doesn't look anything like what it looked, and that was in the early 1900s. I don't know if we got a better one. If you could find one from the other side, a lot of the middle bit, there was big gaps, and they filled it all in. They filled it all in, and they've rebuilt the head, and all this is all new. The neck's new, all this bit's new.
I didn't want to interrupt you but where you were talking about how it would have originally looked, you were pointing towards those rocks where they've been trying to build it back to how it would have looked with when it had all the kind of rivets and steps in it. And I was going to mention that when you are there, one thing you notice is that it's in much better condition around the arse end of it. And you see kind of where you were saying about the muscular, the muscular shape would have been there. Around the arse end, you can see that a lot more because the arse end was under sand for a lot longer than the rest of it was. If you go back to those pictures, you can see that the back end of it is under.
There are some. I'll have to go back and find some of the back, but there's definitely some secret doors. If I just do a quick search for doors, that's not in the ear. That's an interesting one though. There are these notches either side of the face under the ear. You can see that, and they are thought to be like anchor points for a detachable beard. So there was a beard, like a pharaoh's beard, that came out from the chin, but there was also a black beard that connected from the ears down to the thing that was like a strap, and that was that's an anchor point for the beard. But that's not actually a entrance anyway. There's actually
that's correct.
Sorry,
says Smiler just said it's for a face mask.
Yeah,
for a beard,
for a face mask. Yeah. Well, even the Sphinx has got to remain safe.
That's right. Social distancing. That's why you can't get too close to it.
There's a picture of the back end that you were talking about earlier.
Yes. So doesn't that look much better? Especially towards down the bottom end of it as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's been rebuilt. But there's an entrance on the side here that's been covered over. There's an entrance in the middle of the back on the top that again's been covered over, and that one's been completely covered in concrete and filled in. And there's a hatch, an entrance in the middle of the head at the top. There's an entrance that's actually got a plate over the top of it. So those are the entrances that we know about. There's a hole in the tail on the north side that people have noticed. But as you say, there's many thoughts that there's definitely a void inside, and there's several chambers underneath the Sphinx. I don't believe it would hold anything like a library or anything like that, because there's a lot of evidence of, especially around the time of the pharaohs, the water table was a lot higher. So that would have been completely inundated with water at various points throughout the year. So it doesn't seem like a great idea to store anything down there. But you never know. Right. Yeah. So there's lots of question marks over the Sphinx, There's a lot of question marks about the entrances into it, what is actually underneath it. Is it as old as they say it is? And the other thing, of course, is, again, we were talking about the age, and just going back to Maria's photos here. Now, I know the head's had a lot of work done to it, but in general, the head is in a lot better shape than the rest of the body. And we know that throughout most of antiquity, from the Middle Kingdom onwards, that it's been either partially submerged or almost fully submerged up to the neck with sand. So, in theory, the rest of the body should have been better protected than the head. And the head should have worn out by now, and the body should be better preserved. But in fact, it's the other way around. So, that kind of says to me that the head is a newer carved thing than the rest of the body. And the body's actually a lot older. That was my last piece of evidence. So there you go. The Sphinx.
Very interesting.
But yeah, there's
again just so many unanswered questions, and
yeah,
and a lot of I'm not for crazy archaeology where you've got to protect what's there, but archaeologists should be able to explore the Giza plateau more than what they're being allowed to, for us to get to somewhere closer to some of the fuller answers to a lot of the questions. Because we've just in this show and the last show we've talked about, and then we've talked about the Sphinx, and there's just so many different theories, just so many different unanswered questions, and they all have really good logical parts to them, but then there's just so many questions, so it's just so frustrating that they won't allow like better research.
So with the Sphinx lion thing, one of the theories is that before the Old Kingdom, so pre-dynastic era of Egyptology, they worshipped a lion, and specifically this lion was worshipped at the time of the inundation. So when the Nile ran red with silt carried from Upper Egypt down, the Nile turns red at the time of the inundation. That brings sediments and nutrients to the soil and makes the crops grow. And to celebrate this fact, because it was the most important time, of the year, and the Nile would rise, and the Sphinx temple and plateau were built at such a height that it would fill with water during the inundation. So the red waters would rush and fill the area around the Sphinx, and that's when they knew that the inundation had arrived, and they would have a feast and pie, and they'd actually get drunk. It was I've got to look it up. I've forgotten what the festival was called, but basically the entire country got completely rat-assed. And
see me look up all of a sudden when you went drunk, and I went, what?
Yeah. You're going to have to just cover for me a minute. I just want to look something up.
Okay.
You're not being helpful.
Lift me. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, so we didn't really touch on it too much there. I didn't know if Mark was going to go to it later, but where they've done all of those ground scans of the Giza Plateau and used radio waves and stuff like that. Is it radio waves or but anyway, they think they've picked up something that might be it's a similar shape to the Sphinx, but it's still buried and underground, but it would be, and again, this is where I can't remember my facts, whether it's no, hold on, it's got east and west. I think one is east and one is west, but yeah, it's not been dug up as of yet. And again, that's to do with how there's lots and lots of restrictions for international archaeologists, who most of the time don't get the permission to come on site and do the work that they want to do. Are you still searching for what you were searching for?
I found it, I think I found it. So, Sekhmet. So Sekhmet was a goddess, the daughter of Ra, and she's depicted as a lioness. So this is slightly later variant of it, but she was a lioness and the protector of pharaohs during warfare. And we go to somewhere, worship. So during an annual festival held at the beginning of the year, festival of intoxication, Egyptians danced, played music, and drank great quantities of ritual wine. And this was all to do with her story of she, I don't know if it says here, but she slayed a deer or something. Sekhmet blood loss was not. Sekhmet blood loss was not quelled at the end of battle, which led her to destroy most of humanity. So Ra poured beer dyed with red ochre, so that it resembled blood, and so that she'd mistake the beer for blood and would become so drunk that she'd then be peaceful. So when the Nile turns red, yeah, yeah. They placated her with beer, this goddess. And so when the Nile turned red, they said, they thought that was when Ra was, trying to placate Sekhmet, their goddess, which is why Sekhmet, the lioness, the Nile turning red, the Sphinx statue, and this festival all ties into one thing. And they think that was the original purpose of the temple in front. It was a temple to Sekhmet, to this religion, and to this festival. And there's evidence even that the Sphinx was painted red. So there you go.
Yeah, you were talking about that a little bit last time when we were off air.
And you see she's wearing a red dresslet. So yes, there you go, Sekhmet.
So what time would she be around?
Don't know if it's...
Trying to figure what theory that would fit in with, whether it would fit in with it being built at the same time as the Khafre or Khufu pyramid, or whether as something that the Sphinx was much, much earlier.
Right, I think that... I think she was probably herself a later thing. I don't know. Someone might be able to point me in the right symbols. Blah blah blah. Doesn't actually say here.
Well, don't worry about it. Maybe we can find out for next.
We'll find out. Yeah. But I think even if it wasn't her, I think she is a. The thing about gods and goddesses in ancient Egyptian culture is that they go through periods of morphication where they start off as one thing and they morph into something else and then into something else. And so like Osiris and Ra can be traced back to the same thing. And, it's all kind of like... Because it lasted for thousands and thousands of years, it wasn't ever just one thing. It kept changing depending on the style and who was in power and what they believed in at the time.
I mean, there's quite a bit of evidence, isn't there, that they around that time they would have mutilated themselves as well to look. Because they're meant to be gods, and they, mutated, not mutated.
They mutated
themselves, into gods, to make them look more different than the rest of the Egyptians.
Yeah, they did like the long head thing and that sort of thing, didn't they? And
they used to put things around their skulls so that their skull would grow, and when you sort of think about that, you then kind of can understand why there's a lot of alien connection to Egyptian, because maybe that's carried through the centuries with how people have thought about them. And when you look at hieroglyphs as well, some of them in hieroglyphs, they don't look particularly, normal human. And I think that could be part of why there's a lot of school of thought that always connects the pyramids and Egypt and everything to aliens. Maybe that's what's behind it.
Ludicrous from Katie Fitness has got a few comments here. From when you were filling in for me whilst I was doing a bit of research, he wanted to know if you would sing us a few tunes. I don't know if you feel the need to give us a few bars, G.
No, it's a hard no.
No. That is a full stop on that one. Do they change shape as if they had drank a polyjuice potion? Oh, I'm thinking Ludacris might be on the juice.
It took a lot of years. Yeah, he might be on the polyjuice himself.
Yeah. Hermione turned into a cat. Well, that's true. She did. I'm not sure she was Sekhmet, but yeah.
No, that was the professor that turned in. Oh well, sorry, yeah, Hermione took the hair of a cat, didn't she?
She did. Yeah. I say yes. I don't know. I'm just, pretending I know what you're
Just
talking
ask
about.
me because I'm a
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So that's pretty
There
much.
was one.
Oh, it's gone. Mm-hmm.
There was one thing that I just wanted to go bring up, and I don't know whether we're coming close to the end of the episode, but a slightly funny one to end on, but not that funny. But when I sent you the pictures for the on Egypt, there was a picture in there that we didn't show, we didn't use. It was a picture of a hieroglyph. I don't know if you can still dig that up.
Bear with me, caller. Hieroglyph. Is it this one?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a actual hieroglyph, and I pulled this off last episode because it kind of, I just thought when I was saying it would be nice, funny because it could look like one thing, but basically this is meant to, or archaeologists think that this is possibly a depiction of them using some sort of spotlights or something that's powered that shines light, buckets of light, or something that they use to cast. So you've got what looks like, because again, if it was the sort of Tesla kind of energy that they were using, it would be very much lightning based. So you've kind of got like the lightning inside, and yeah, it's just archaeologists say that, or people who kind of subscribe to that theory that the pyramids are to do about making power or some other form of energy, that this hieroglyph kind of leans towards that, because what else do you explain it is that they're depicting that they're holding there?
Lotus flowers.
Yeah.
With snakes inside them. And I think it's even more interesting than that, because this is an interest. I'm not poo-pooing their light bulbs and they have electricity.
It's not mine. I'm just passing it on. This was part of when I was doing my research, when it was a hieroglyph that came up that basically said that people have said that this is an example of what helps lean towards that theory. So it's not my theory. I'm just passing it along.
But
shoot the message.
But two figures standing opposite each other, with plant-based iconology of the area, and the lotus flowers were important to Egyptians, and with snakes, snake archaeology, with some sort of pedestal in the middle or a tree in the middle, and usually with them holding a handbag. This iconology is found throughout the world, with similar structure and similar meaning, from Aborigines to South American Aztec cultures, to Sumerian, to the other Middle Eastern cultures, including the Old Testament and things like that. It's relates to what in the Old Testament is the Garden of Eden and the snake and the apple, and the tree of life, or the fountain of youth, or all those sorts of things. And I say usually it involves a pedestal or a tree in the middle, someone holding a flower or a snake, and the two figures standing facing each other, and usually involves them holding a handbag. Don't know why the handbag, but it usually involves them holding a handbag.
Yeah, now that you say that, I can remember either reading or watching something about that, because they were giving examples of how many different hieroglyphs have got these, what are meant to be pharaohs or whatever, and they're holding like what looks like a handbag. And I think one of the theories is that it was like flower petals or things like that they used to carry about, because obviously the hygiene back then wasn't great, and it made them more godly, that they smelt nice and perfumed. But again, I think there was lots of different theories, but that's just one that I remembered, because I thought, it'd be really strange thinking of pharaohs walking around carrying pot puree in a bag.
You're now going to have to cover with a song or something, because I want to find a picture of what I'm talking about with the handbag. And this is an interesting thing, because it's one of those tiny little potential pieces of evidence we have for an older, higher culture, because it's something that ties ancient cultures in every major landmass together. Before
it's a handbag,
but it's a handbag. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but it's tenuous. But it's all we have.
I think you're right about the theory, because it's also, they found evidence of it in Sumerian archaeological
Sumerian
sites and stuff like that as well.
It's found.
It shows that there's this pattern of behavior that goes through quite a few of these ancient cultures that might connect them together in some way.
Here's possibly one. I don't know if it's
Feel the breeze in the trees.
Yes, sorry. I'm trying to find something in particular. Well, let's try that one. There you go. So this is got it. So this is the Metro. Mysterious handbags of the gods spotted in ancient sculptures from around the world. So these two sculptures here are from different parts of the world, and they're both clutching a handbag. I think like this one is like Mayan. This one, I'm not sure what that one is. This one's a Mesopotamian one, so from around Iraq. And there he is, holding his handbag. There's some within totem poles.
Yeah.
You see, this person's on like a serpenty-like snake. They're all sort of in side profile, and if you could see the rest of these sculptures, there'll be another person over here, and there will be some sort of font in the middle. But they are found from all over the world, whether it be some sort of pale, yeah. But anyway, it's there's a good Mesopotamian one. But why they feel, oh, here's a really good old picture, and you see what I'm talking about, where they're both facing on to, this is a depiction of like a plant with the flowers. So you remember me saying about the lotus flower being shown?
Yeah.
Lotus flower. This is like the depiction of the tree of life. Alcohol? No, I don't want an advert. Where's my picture gone? Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, that first one that you showed, I think that one was Egyptian, the one that looked a little bit like a bird.
Oh, did it? Yeah, it could have been Egyptian, yeah.
I'm going to send you one, because there's a lot of... 2 seconds, I'm just going to email you a picture.
Oh, thank you.
I think this one
You didn't actually.
is quite interesting.
Yeah, you could have sang handbags and glad rags. You know, the theme tune to The Office, wasn't it?
Oh, that would have been super
Handbags and the glad rags.
Stereophonics.
Stereophonics. Yeah. Have you said?
Yeah,
that
I've just
to me?
emailed you a picture. I think it's a really good example of where it pops up in Egyptian as well, and if I remember rightly, in Egyptian one it has more kind of obvious significance. It's and there's multiple ones where they kind of show that it has some sort of purpose because there's multiple people holding it and stuff. Like it felt like it had some sort of very symbolic.
Did you send that through to Monteban?
I did, yeah. Just maybe should have prepped this.
Not come through, I'm afraid. It's not come through.
Maybe. Oh no, sorry. Hold on. Now it's sent. Sorry, it must have done one of those things where it said you can't send it because it hasn't finished uploading yet. So you should have it. I think that's a pretty good example. Yeah.
Right. Got it. Got
Awesome.
it. There we go. Hopefully that's come through. People can see that. Yeah, sorry, Maz. I made the screen disappear. We might have disappeared on you then. So, yay, we're back. There we go. Yeah, I can make this bigger, I suppose. There we go. So, yeah. I don't know if it is the same thing though, is it?
It's just that it's faded away a little bit more, but they're basically saying that that's what they're passing. What we were talking about earlier on, the handbags.
Oh, what?
They're sort of passing it to each other.
Oh. I know in Egyptian times that the handbag morphed into a male symbol. You know, the loop with the cross.
Yeah,
and they held that instead.
Yes.
And
in fact, I think the picture that you showed earlier on of the one in the red dress, I think she was wearing or holding one.
Was she? What?
I can't remember. The black. I'm pretty sure she was.
Oh, I think that person's gone now. Oh, she was. Well, there you go. Yeah. She's Yeah, she's holding the staff, and that. There you go. Yeah, so it morphed into that. Yeah, that would have been a handbag.
And the men's one is more what looks like a typical handbag, but that's meant to symbolize female. So the female's holding the male symbol.
Well spotted, G. Well spotted. Yeah. There you go. Because there is a theory that there was a civilization before Egyptians, before Sumerians, before Mesopotamians that were an advanced culture in that they weren't necessarily as advanced as Sumerians and Egyptians, but they were pretty advanced, but somehow left no mark behind that they ever existed. And the theory is because they existed, say, around between 30,000 years ago and 15,000 years ago, when the water levels were a lot lower and the land masses were larger because we were in the last ice age, and It was probably easier to get to, like, there was a land bridge all the way across to Australia from the Middle East, where Indonesia, rather than being a chain of islands, was a big landmass, and there was a culture. And when there was a mass extinction event around, was it 15,000 years ago? They call it the Younger Dryas event, where they think meteors hit the Earth and caused a cataclysm that caused the ice to melt rapidly, like really quick, and flooded vast swathes of the countryside. And that's where a lot of the flood myths come from. And those that managed to escape the floods and head north, particularly up the Persian Gulf, then ended up settling in what became Sumeria. And which is why in a lot of Sumerian ancient texts, they talk about being the sons and daughters of a great race. They talk about something that came before them. The land, they come from the land of the gods, and they were like refugees from the lands of the gods, and that's the way they talked about themselves. And the Egyptians talk about themselves in the same way, that they inherited the lands from a previous culture.
Maz has just commented that her Egyptologist had said that the symbol that you see them holding was to promote long life.
Yeah, which is why when they're holding the handbags in a lot of the ancient Sumerian versions of it, they were like stood around the tree of life. Because
it's just overall connected as like a lucky charm sort of thing. That's how it's kind of talked about and how it's portrayed in where they found it in all the findings. That it's and but the weird thing is that there's that connection, which is great. There's that connection that shows the evolution of its history across other civilizations other than just Egyptians, which is really interesting. In fact, what you were just saying, I just want to go on to that because, you didn't mention it subtly. Some of us don't mind sounding like a kook, but, what you're talking about kind of leans towards the whole mystery or theory of Atlantis, that lost civilization that got lost underwater. It just happens to be one thing that I kind of do. I'd love it if we could do a show on theories and evidence around Atlantis. That would be cool.
Yeah, maybe we could do that next.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe that's January's Atlantis. It gives me something to research, look up.
Again, it's another one where there's kind of quite a few different theories. And again, theories that there's parts of them that kind of make you go, that is really interesting, and then others that go,
Yeah, I'm glad Maz pointed out that it was for long life, symbols of long life, because that really bores out with what the other uses of it are from around the world. It all seems to be related to the font of eternal youth, or the tree of life, or I think some of it is like I think it's a bucket of water. They're taking water to the tree of life in the center. That's what it probably was initially, or something like that. And it's the same as some of it. It's like an apple tree and the snake that we see in those early ones, and that all then goes to the what are you laughing at? The Gardens of Eden. So it's where the story of the Garden of Eden come from and all that.
The Hanging Gardens of Babylon and stuff like that. The original Seven Wonders of the World really interests me because they're out there for you to read about and study about, but nobody knows exactly where some of them are. Like the Hanging Garden of Babylon. There's theories. But yeah,
I think the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were a sort of a misconception from Westerners, weren't they? That when they went to Sumeria and found the ruins of Ur and Ursat, the great Babylonian cities, they found these giant ziggurats, which were like pyramids. They're like step pyramids, like 5 tiered step pyramids, and they were derelict, and at the time the ground was still fertile, and from each step plants had grown and trailed down the sides of the ziggurats. So when people first found them, we're talking in antiquity, back in the Roman times, and that they saw these tiers of plant life growing out of these walls, that they looked like they were suspended like from nowhere, and which is where they got the name the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. But I think they were ruined ziggurats. That's just me talking off the top of my head. I could be talking complete rubbish.
Yeah, that's a really good example, because you're right. That is one of the theories. But then there's plenty of it. So that's why it's an interesting subject to explore, like Atlantis. And maybe we could do Atlantis, which a lot of people, especially when you say the word Atlantis, they don't necessarily believe in it. But then it's just about believing that there was an earlier civilization. But then maybe we could do an episode about the original wonders, or break them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. Because again, it's one of those things that got lost in time, and so there's a lot of people who have theories to fill the gaps, and it's interesting to talk about them and contemplate them, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's us covered for December. I think we've droned on enough to our poor audience. I think everyone is like, please let us go. Let this end.
No.
But thank you. I've really enjoyed talking about it today.
Yeah, I was laughing earlier because Ludacris was asking me to sing songs about a handbag.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's where I got the handbag and glad rags from. Yeah. Yes. So thank you, chat. Thank you for coming and listening to us this evening. We've really enjoyed ourselves, and we hope to see you back. Enjoyed this, geezers. Yeah. Thanks, Mala.
Yeah.
We hope to see you back in January for Atlantis, our talk on Atlantis, and we hopefully will. Sorry.
And maybe we can hopefully just sneak in a little bit there, talking about the potential of a new Stargate series.
Yeah, could do. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of exciting. Yeah. You never know. Maybe we'll find it. In our research, we'll be the ones that crack the code. You never know. You could hear it here first, guys. If not, you can still join us next week for our second Next Generation review show for The Naked Now. Next Wednesday, G, don't forget.
Yep.
Get watching, taking notes.
One of my favourite ever episodes, so I wouldn't miss it.
Hang on. No. Maz has put a request in. Can we do the TNG review show on Thursday rather than Wednesday?
I can't do Thursday, unfortunately. I'm working late night shopping and don't finish till 9:15. Okay,
yeah, no worries. Is it all right, Maz, if we stick with Wednesday and you step this one out? Yeah, she's got her work to do. Yeah, okay. Well, no worries. I mean, luckily there's 3 of us, so we don't have to all be on every one, and you can have the night off. Yeah. Okay, so yes, TNG review show next Wednesday at 8:00 normal time. Talk about The Naked Now. And yes, thank you for joining us. We'll see you. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Cheers all.
Bye.
Stay.